Kimura-ji, first of all, namaste to you, and namaste. And where shall we begin? And this is this should not be a meeting between the self and the other. It should be a meeting between unbounded life and unbounded life. Hmm?
Yes.
And
sounds very interesting.
Yeah, and so we've got. I'm too much interested in Buddhism. But I realized that Buddhism has been, I've got a small library of books on Buddhism, and I've been studying for the last 30 years. And recently I've had some new insights into Buddhism. But my young friend, Lakshmi Kumar, who's organized this dialogue between both of us, he told me that the emphasis here is our dialogue centered on the theme of the Parliament of the World's Religions, and that should find prominence here. But we can also dialogue on common ground in Buddhism and going more deeply into Buddhism and your own position there, and my impressions and my views and so on. And
well, since you are so interested in Buddhism, we can start there and then move on to the Parliament's subject, and they are connected, I think.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course they are connected. Yes. Right. You see, I was watching one of your videos, and I found that you were using a big self and the small self, and that was central to your whole teaching or whole way of talking about the spiritual life. And I was rather stunned because I had the impression that you're a Zen master and groomed very strongly in the Zen school in Japan. And I was under the impression that the Buddha's philosophy of anatta and the non-existence of self in everything, and there is only impermanence, and there is only suffering, and there is the absence of a rock-like permanent self, those being the central theses of the Buddha's teachings. And I was a little surprised how self became almost a kind of a central theme in what you were talking. So will you clarify to me how self has taken such a central position in this branch of Buddhism, the Zen Buddhism, which and maybe that's the first question I would like to put to you.
Okay. So I can talk about that from a Buddhism perspective and my own experience perspective, so I will merge together. So Buddhism is a huge body of spiritual teachings, and it evolved in the last 25 centuries.
Right.
It moved from India all the way to Southeast Asia, one school, and another school went all the way to China, Korea, and Japan.
Right.
And it adjusted to different cultures.
Right.
And also Buddhist masters had new kind of insight, and they had a different kind of audience. So talking about Buddhism, it's like talking about Hinduism. And the Hinduism is also a huge body of knowledge, a huge body of teachings. And if you study everything, which I haven't done, neither Hinduism or Buddhism, but when you study many different schools, sometimes you may find a total contradiction, at least on the surface.
Right.
So we can't really talk about Buddhism, which school. And also, either it is Hinduism, the term Hinduism didn't exist until Vivekananda actually put together. So it was like a 19th century phenomenon. There was no such thing as Hinduism before Vivekananda. So when we talk about Hinduism or Buddhism, we want to talk about which school and also what master is talking. So whether it is Hinduism or Buddhism or even Christianity, Judaism, in the most fundamental sense, there is an ineffable experience. And masters who had that so-called awakening experiences, they try to communicate to their audience. And communication happens between the speaker and listener. And what is communicated is not what is spoken, but what is heard. So every master, when he or she is communicating, has to be very sensitive to the audience to which he or she is speaking. So same master may be speaking to different audiences and using the language of the audience in such a way that they can actually contribute to the audience. So Buddhism in the West, the most popular one is based significantly on the Madhyamika teaching, which emphasizes, neti-neti and non-existence of self. But when you look at the whole body of Buddhism, the notion of self exists in many different schools, including Zen. And I shared with you my translation of Shobo Genzo by Zen Master Dogen, in which he talks about self a lot, actually.
Right. Oh, I read that, yes.
And you see, that's one thing. And number two, so at the same time, Buddhism is unique amongst all the teachings that came into existence in India. And what is unique about Buddhism is not necessarily this notion of non-self. Because this non-self is a Buddhist way of saying there's a distinction between what is actual and what is nominal. So there are things that exist actually, body, atoms, energy, those things exist actually. But ideas, even names, have a nominal existence. So when people confuse that which is actual and nominal, there's a problem. And so there's an element to the self which is entirely nominal. And there is a self that is actual. And one element of Buddhist teaching is wanted to make clear the distinction between actual and nominal. So they are not denying the actuality of self, but they are denying the confusion or indistinction between actual and nominal. So when you're talking about the self, which one are you talking about? So that is one thing. Secondly, what is most unique about Buddhism is this. Indian mind is, Indian people are mathematical geniuses. You have the greatest mathematicians in the history of humanity, many of whom are not known, but in the West. And Indian mind is very abstract, metaphysically abstract and structural. And the language is constructed in such a way, they are more like talking about geometry of the universe. So it is a timeless geometry of the universe, timeless structure of the universe and self and consciousness. And Buddhism is unique in that they begin to see a different aspect of meditative experience, which is phenomenological. Meaning, so let's say in Vedanta or other, highly developed Indian philosophical systems, they will talk about the mind. And Buddhism will talk about mentation. You talk about self-knowing as opposed to self-knowledge. And so you can say Hindu tradition or Indian mind talk about the structure, eternal structure, and geometry of consciousness and geometry of the universe. Buddhism, on the other hand, observes phenomenologically the movement or process of this meditation, and they describe what is observed. So what is most unique about Buddhism is its phenomenological aspect. So using the Western science comparison, so Hinduism is more like Newtonian science. And or you can say the Newtonian-based Western science, which include, of course, Einstein and quantum physics. It is in the tradition, even if they disagree on some things, there's a fundamental flow of tradition where they describe mathematically, geometrically, and mathematically the eternal truth. Of course, in science, there is no such thing as eternal truth, but the getting closer and closer and closer and describing this. So that is a Hindu tradition, Indian mind, and in the Western, there is a Goethean science. Goethe was a critique of Newton, and he brought into existence the phenomenological science, which is you observe and you begin to really delve into this observation without jumping into formulation. Let's observe, describe. So continuous process, and then you begin to have an insight, and you start to formulate. But formulation is a secondary to the actual phenomenological observation, and your understanding happens in that flow of time. Sigmund Freud, you can say he's successor to Goethe in the sense that psychology, you observe and observe and observe phenomenological science. You can say Nietzsche was also a phenomenologist as a philosopher, because he was not into building systems like Hegel, but he wanted to actually look at the whole process of this formulating systems, and then you begin to observe the fundamental underlying assumptions upon which the system is built. So he is going back into the fundamental assumptions and looking at this. Again, phenomenological. So that can be a kind of an interesting analogy, Newtonian and Goethean. And Hinduism, in that sense, is more on the Newtonian side, and Buddhism is more on the Goethean side. And that, to me, is the most unique aspect of Buddhism. And from that perspective, the self is also a process. What we call self, the small self you're talking about, is it's an ongoing, moving, and there's no like one self. It is ongoingly taking on different forms, different shapes, and then there is a description of it and actually experience of it. So from that, phenomenological observation, they come to realize there is no such thing as a static self. That is the fundamental, insight. One of the fundamental insights arising from this phenomenological approach. So there may be self-thing, but there is no such thing as self that appears in this phenomenological observation. And Buddhism is history of Buddhism is an ongoing evolution into this, the exploration in this phenomenological observation of the mind, consciousness, and the self. So to me, your self-knowing has lots of Buddhist element in that sense, because it is not self-knowledge, self-knowing, which is a process.
Okay, thank you for making the proposition that Hinduism is more interested in theory building, and that Buddhism is more empirical, doing laboratory experiments. If we make an analogy with physics, then there are theoreticians who are doing the abstract thinking. And then there are people like Michelson-Morley who are doing the Michelson-Morley experiment, who are coming up with experimental evidence for the photoelectric effect or for the Michelson-Morley experiment. And then you've got to build a theory which will account for those empirical findings. Now, the position you take, Kimura-ji, is an extreme one. That because in each civilization, in the Hindu civilization, after all, the Hindus were extremely creative people. They were observers of the night sky. They charted the night sky. They studied the night sky. They knew every constellation. And they created beautiful astronomy. And what is more amazing is they applied this astronomy to astrology. And they found that the astronomical charts tell the story of man's life as well. If we choose to apply that knowledge onto the domain of terrestrial events, what is happening in the life of man. And so there was also a lot of empirical work, observation going on in India, going on in the Hindu world. And go with you in that the word Hinduism may be given by the white man, and but we have a name, and the name which is, if you go to the epistemology and ontology of that name, it has got a very strong Buddhist flavor, because it is called Sanatana Dharma. It is a flowing movement. It's continuously evolving. It is changing. It's not a fixed thing. It's like a river in movement. In some places, the river is brown in color. In some places, the river is blue in color. Then in some places, the river develops rapids. And some places, it becomes turbulent. And so, but it's a whole thing. It's moving. It's essentially, it has no beginning and it has no end. Now, this is the religion of the Hindus. It has no beginning. It has no end.
Yes. I understand. And I'm not saying it is either or.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. And also, in the process of evolution of Buddhism, as well as Vedanta and other Hindu philosophies, there have been an interchange between Buddhist and Hindu scholars. And some Buddhist scholars say that Sri Sankaracharya's teaching has a lot of Buddhist element, and it's quite possible because they are speaking same language and they are reading each other's writings. So like categorizing into two is really oversimplification. But I'm
True.
I'm suggesting that there's this phenomenological observation.
Not just go slowly.
Yes.
Go slowly. It's not just, you see, you take the Buddha's lifetime work and you take the work of Hindu rishis. In every society, there is what is called creative minority in every society. Now you see this creative minority in politics and statecraft, in religion, in society, and in India, which is a spiritual civilization, the creative minority, they have a special name. They are called rishis, which means they go on getting insights, basically. They work with intelligence and they keep on breaking new ground. Now, if you look at the Buddha himself, you cannot say that the Buddha is an empiricist. Now, he begins with empirical observations, but definitely there is quite a lot of theoretical formulation in the principles of pratitya samutpada and the principle of the anatta, which is you're trying to give a theory for empirical observation. So there is both theory and there is both empiricism, and it is like two strands which are plated, which are constantly plated, one influencing the other and the other influencing the first one. So it's going on like that. It's like a double bullock cart.
In one of your kind of questions that I read about Buddhism, Buddha, Gautama the Buddha, never really made answer the metaphysical cosmological questions. And why?
Right.
And one possible answer, which I think is maybe closest to the truth, is that when you climb the mountain, you go to the peak, you have a different view from those who are just beginning to climb the mountains, and you can see the view, you can have the view and describe what you see, and sometimes it is good because then people get more inspired by it and try to understand it. But Buddha's experimental pragmatic approach was that there isn't really too much benefit for people to be just reading the final picture, but provide people the way to climb the mountain so that they will reach the top of the mountain and they will have the view themselves. And so the theory, original, Buddhist theories are more like a paradigm, is the principles and hypotheses and practices based on those hypotheses and principles. So it is, of course, those people who followed Buddha in the last 2,500 years, there have been many, intellectuals, Vasubandhu, Nagarjuna, great intellect, who actually formulated theories, of course.
Right.
So I'm not denying that aspect of this.
Right.
But I think the emphasis on experience and emphasis on the mentation and emphasis on this process and emphasis on knowing instead of building the knowledge seems to me, from the very beginning of Buddhism, it has been very strongly, they don't deny the theory, unlike Nietzsche, who basically, wrote off system building is not good. No, that at least, we don't know Nietzsche's final thought because he died, he went mad too young to know exactly what he was thinking. But, what we have seen, he was basically kind of critical of system building. And Buddhists are not, against system building. but it is more secondary to actual phenomenological observation and experience and experiment of spiritual development. So that's what I want to say about that.
Okay. I think that is may not be the total picture, because talking about okay, I'll come to that, but I want to comment on some of your observations, Kimura-ji.
Yes.
I agree with you that Buddhism has proliferated very much like a banyan tree with aerial roots, and the Buddha's teaching being the central trunk. And there are too many aerial roots which has come from the central trunk, because basically the founder, he gave the freedom for everybody to explore and to investigate. So because the founder gave that freedom to explore and to investigate, he said every one of you is a potential Buddha. So therefore it blossomed like a banyan tree with a large number of aerial roots. In that sense, it does have a similarity with Hinduism, which is actually 100 religions. Hinduism is never one religion. It is not realized, but it is 100 religions. And this comes from the fact that in Sanatana Dharma, they have a very important principle, which is that the teaching is not important. The temperament of the individual is important, because you cannot massify a teaching and say that everybody must fit into the teaching. This teaching is the truth, and therefore whatever your difficulties may be, whatever your virtues and vices may be, you have to squeeze yourself, and you have to chop off your sins and your vices, and you've got to fit into the same universal mold. Now that is not there in Hinduism. They have a principle which is called Adhikari Bheda Nyaya, which means that every seeker is different from every other seeker, and therefore there have to be million paths for million seekers. That is basically Hinduism. Now
there we have complete agreement.
Yes, I know that. I know that.
Total agreement. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that you made the proposition that Buddhism also is exactly like Hinduism. It's like a banyan tree where there are hundreds of schools of thought which differ from each other, and depends who is your teacher and what is the system you're following. And it's obvious that people belonging to one school will have certain kinds of experiences, and they will have certain kinds of insights which people belonging to another school may not have. They will have different insights, they will have different experiences. So in that sense, the diversity may be veiling the unity. The diversity may be so rich and so disparate that the unity may be hard to find. Like the unity in Hinduism is very hard to find, because you have everything from alpha to omega. Because in humanity, in the human family, you have human beings from alpha to omega. You got every kind of human being, and every kind of human being must go home to the divine, must find out who he is. And therefore, for everybody, there has to be a yoga, there has to be a path, there has to be a system, even for the agnostic, even for the atheist, even for the materialist. And therefore, that tremendous richness and recognition of the importance of respecting the individual and finding a path which will befit his temperamental makeup. So which is the hallmark of Hinduism. I think the same thing has happened also to Buddhism. I agree with you in that, but I'm hearing it for the first time, but I straight away agree with you from my reading of Buddhist literature, because I find that it is as vast, it's very, very vast.
You see, in today's language, we can say that Buddhism, Buddhist masters and the Hindu rishis, their teachings concerns people awakening from mass hypnosis. When we are born into a culture, we become programmed, conditioned by the culture from the very beginning.
Right.
Actually, it starts maybe when you're in the womb.
Right.
Because the cultural conditioning and cultural programming takes place. And then when you start to grow up, you absorb some form of belief systems. And usually the culture homogenizes people. They do not necessarily appreciate the individuality. I call each human being a singular cosmic destiny. There's a singularity to each person, but the singularity is not nurtured or even recognized. And so by the time we, grow up, by the time you become 7 years old, basic programming and conditioning is done. And basic conditioning is, people, you talk about the creative minority. What's the difference between creative minority and the rest?
That is
so everybody has the innate creativity, but most people in the process of growing up, they use creativity to recreate the cultural memes into which they're born. And so their creativity is only used for recreation. So, which means, you develop certain belief systems that permeate the culture. And the creative minority are those people who somehow break from that recreative pattern to begin to create something unique. So human beings are all hypnotized collectively, but awakening happens individually. And either it is Buddhism or Hinduism, and any school of Hinduism or any school of Buddhism, fundamental purpose, or Christianity, all of those religions, they are masters, awakened ones. Their purpose in teaching is to actually dehypnotize people, bringing them outside of this hypnotized, normal awakened state into real awakened state. And so it is very individually oriented. Therefore, as you said exactly, each person wake up himself, herself, and how they wake up is singular. So, so I'm basically agreeing with you from my perspective. And when Buddha was alive, there was an element of Hindu traditions, Upanishadic traditions, becoming more another form of belief system. And the real awakening experience was not really conveyed. So that's why he emphasized experiential real awakening process. And so had he born in different time, he would have taught differently. So that's the reason why he really emphasized the experience more than anything, and moved away from the theorizing as much as possible, because he didn't want to build a new belief system for the people who are already impacted by belief systems. So anyway, that is my reading of it. And Zen is also, so that I realized when I was like 16 years old that I realized I don't think. I wasn't really thinking. I was just repeating. So I realized that heavy weight of belief into which I was born, belief system into which I was born,
right,
and also not only cognitively I was conditioned, but cogitatively how I think is also conditioned.
Right.
So, and then creative thinkers, they actually invent thinking before they begin to think. And I realized, of course, I'm speaking from this perspective, but that was the basic realization of the absence of thinking. And that's one of the paths I have taken to really being able to think in my way, originally, authentically, creatively. And and most of the Buddhism, just like most of Hinduism, Christianity, any religion, it has turned into a belief system. Experience is missing. And then,
you're got to go slowly.
In a general teaching, the experience is missing.
The experience is, okay, continue. I'll come back to you. Continue, please continue.
Yeah. For example, even the Zen Buddhism, I felt very close to, because it is not based on any beliefs, but if anything, it is a breaking of beliefs. It is like a breaking away from the beliefs, not only the conditioning. You have the direct experience of awakening and breaking from this mass hypnosis into which you were born. And even that Zen, when you in Zen school in Japan, it has turned into kind of a formalism and belief systems. And people go through some formal trainings and rituals, and some people even teach, but there's really no experience of awakening is present, even among Zen masters.
I understand.
So, but what I found in Japan at that time, with a limited amount of exposure to anything, I found Zen to be the closest to my heart, in the sense that its original essence is the direct experience of awakening. Yes.
Kimura-ji, I have a different perspective on the whole business of experience.
Okay, please.
Now we have got to move very cautiously on this ground of the importance and the validity of experience. Now you may have an experience of cosmic consciousness, and then which may leave a residue in consciousness, so that you have a feeling that there is a reality underlying the sensorial reality, which may be taken to be a final reality, but there is another very, very subtle reality, which is heavenly, which is blissful. And without tasting that reality, new meaning and vivification of life will not happen to an individual. You may have that conviction. But if you look at all the people who have had these experiences, the so-called peak experiences, you will find that the experience has a stamp and a residue on you, maybe for 3 months or 6 months. And then at the end of it, the experience may wane away and it may fade away. Now, a few days ago, I was listening to an American neurologist. You might have heard of him, Dr. Abin Alexander, who had an meningitis infection in the brain, and then he went into coma. And then he went to what is described in all the religions as heaven. And he describes it in a talk which lasts for something like 1 hour and 20 minutes, and very authentic description. And then the experience ceases. So it is magnificent and timeless so long as it lasts. But once the experience is over, you land thud into earth reality. You land. And then begins the phenomenon of craving. Now you start craving for that. Now that experience is not going to come back. It's not going to come back. And for some people, what happens is, along with the experience, there is an explosion of an insight. And that insight has an everlasting quality, which is called realization or understanding. And that understanding seems to be the critical thing rather than the experience itself. For example, Ramana Maharshi had an experience at the age of 16. Now, no chakras, no kundalini, no lights, no expansion of consciousness. It was just the direct insight that he is the self. At the age of 16, it lasted only 15 minutes. It is not a mystical experience. It is a realization and an insight. And it lasted a whole lifetime. It never came back. None of these experiences will come back. If you're a mystic, like Krishnamurti, then the experience may be coming back. But even then, once you come back to earth reality, and because you have your senses and you're dealing with earth reality through your senses, you are excellent material for contamination and pollution by Maya. All the grandioseness of the experience will just vanish into thin air. So that by itself is not anything. You can look at the Buddha's life. We have to have listening to the teaching, Shravana, Manana, contemplation, Nididhyasana, meditation. So the real realization can come only as a result of culmination, not simply because you have an experience. I have seen hundreds of people have magnificent experiences. They continue to be the bad people they always were. They came back to their home country of self-centeredness and illusion. I personally know. Those experiences have not helped them at all. Because basically, they are not spiritual seekers, and their destiny is not a spiritual destiny. It is a material destiny. Depends on what our destiny is. That depends on how the divine is playing out our life. That's not in our hands.
I do not know why you see what you're saying is different from what I am saying, because I completely agree with you. And the spiritual experience and what they call peak experience is not the same.
Right.
You can have peak experience taking drugs, for example. And I have never taken that drug.
Oh my God.
It's almost like, yes. And everything you are saying is absolutely, I totally agree. And you know, what happens is sometimes those insights brings into existence fundamental contextual shift, the shift in context in which one lives one's life. Right. And if there is any shift, like a breakthrough, is a contextual shift. That people begin to live their lives in a different context, a different framework. And that is what this insight, realization, whatever you call. So in the case of Ramana Maharshi, that's what happened to him, and many others. And then it is not like a ecstasy aspect of it.
Right.
It is this, you know, contextual shift aspect of it. And some people have insight, but still they live inside the old context. And it becomes like a spiritual materialism, as they call. And some people have this real radical contextual shift, and they begin to, you know, live their lives in accordance with their singular spiritual destiny. So so I completely agree with you. I mean, it is absolutely correct. You know, and I have made the mistake that you mentioned. I had that experience when I was 16 years old, and I did have a lot of insight. But the 16, unlike Ramana Maharshi, you know, in my case, the fundamental contextual shift didn't take place. I had a lot of insight, but you know, I was still an ambitious young man. My ambition changed the direction. It's no longer ambition I had before, but still I was, in a way, my ego was not fully mature, so that it was not ready to let go of itself. And then, so exactly what you're talking about, I fell into that trap of trying to recapture that experience. And the funny thing is, it never happened when I was in the monastery. And then I, went to India to study, Hindu philosophy. And I took a break from my study, and I went to Nepal. And then my passport and money and everything was stolen in Kathmandu. So I was basically stuck in Nepal for 5 months. And the director of National Archives in Kathmandu was a good friend of my professor. So I stayed in his house, and then I borrowed some money from him because my parents would be sending me money later. And I took a trip to Pokhara, and I stayed on in the Himalayas, and it was so beautiful. So I just enjoyed myself and meditating. And again, I had the experience when I was not looking for it.
Right.
But it was not like as intense. It was like it was not even. You can say there's an element of ecstasy, but it was more like a real profound fulfillment. And that's when contextual shift took place. So I was not looking for the experience. And when I was 16, I was not expecting the experience. And 26, I was not seeking the experience. And the experience was secondary to that contextual shift. So I came back from Himalaya mountains as a different person. And so I had the similar experience one more time, but it was no longer experience. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you. It is a contextual shift that takes place with the insight. And that's very interesting because, Krishnamurti talked about that insight. And you cannot actually make people have that insight. And I think he had an interesting experiment in talking to people. And somehow people try to have that insight seems to have, failed. And Dr. David Bohm, I think he had that insight shortly before he actually died. So
we really don't know. You see, like a great master like Krishnamurti or the Buddha, they may come and they may say so many things, and the individual has to do a lot of work by himself. Depends on the trajectory of his destiny, which is not entirely in his hands. To some extent, it may be in his hands. It's not entirely in his hands. I say that as an astrologer, and depends on the sincerity of the quest and the passion. Now, in the Yoga Sutras of Maharshi Patanjali, it is mentioned that passion is very important, and that people who are very passionate and very intense, they will be delivered faster. It is mentioned. And that if the fire is not there, then you will move at the pace of a tortoise. And so it's a very complex thing, and it varies from one individual to another individual. And there is also the suitability of the temperament of that individual for a given yoga, or for a given religion, or for a given system of meditation, or even system of theory. That suitability is there. What may be very agreeable to some kind of people. For example, you take people who have too much of the rajas energy. Like you see in adventurers and the motor car racers like Schumacher, and the marathon runners, they have abundant amount of energy. Now for them, the breaking of the self or the realization may happen during one of their marathon sessions, which might be a meditation superior to somebody sitting in a Zen monastery or in a Hindu ashram, closing his eyes and having some mudra and chanting some mantra. Because there are million paths for million people. And somebody may have enlightenment even in his sleep. Because his subconscious is working on something. The problem is passed on to the subconscious. It's working. And next morning when he gets up, the whole thing is different. So while these masters like the Buddha and Krishnamurti, they've started something new, and thank God they gave the freedom to people to work it out and not say that everybody must fit into a certain pattern, and then everybody will be trying to fit into that pattern, and everybody will become a Buddha robo, a Krishnamurti robo. Thank God they didn't create the robos.
You know, between year 2006 and 2014, I did an experiment in teaching with a small group of people at a time. Maybe altogether 100 people, or a little over 100 people went through. And so meditation was part of the program, but I never gave same meditation to different people.
Oh, great.
And also, depending on their progress, you know, I gave different meditation. And so in order to individualize, you can't have 100 people at a time. So the largest one was 40, but the first year I had like 40 people. I said, there's too many people. So number was below 20, 15 to 20. Then I can focus on each person and work on individual basis. So there's a basic lecture and the interaction session, but also interaction. It is not like I teach something. Each person is dealing with his or her own issues in life. Evolutionary issues. So we go in there. And it was a combination of Zen koan and Socratic dialogue. And each koan is each person's life. So somebody has some issues that become a koan, and we have a dialogue. So I have a dialogue with this person. I ask questions. And other people completely participate. So at that moment, this person and me talking, and his issue is everybody's koan. And so, people are free to, share their insight or even ask some questions. And then there's definitely, when that intensity is there, one sitting, some people have real breakthrough. It doesn't mean it changes their context. But they have breakthrough insight into their issues, and so their particular koan is solved in that moment, or resolved in that moment. And out of this 100 plus people, probably no more than 10 people had a contextual shift. But it was not bad. Out of 100, if less than 10 people, it was not bad. Like a 10% of 5 to 10% of people somehow some contextual shift. So you cannot force it, but you can actually intensify it, and it intensifies when we deal with each person with the particular real issues in their lives as a koan, and examine. See, every problem has an assumption behind it. So one of the self-knowing is the self, nominal self, is built upon set of assumptions. And our ego is developed as a paradigm, so to speak, strategy not to experience some painful experience in the past. People have some kind of traumas, And when you observe how people develop their personalities, it's almost like designed to not experience that trauma again. So, and unless you actually re-experience it, the trauma it continue. Yes,
of course.
So on the one hand, you're avoiding it, and your ego is built up on it, and there's a trauma here. So this always don't want to go there. You see, in the denial of reality. So sometimes it becomes more psychological. I tell people this is not psychotherapy, but you are looking within yourself. There's a psychological approach in many ways, because you have to go into your psyche deeply. So those labels, philosophy, psychology, those things kind of disappears, and it is your issue, and your evolution, your development, your transformation, and it is you who can do it. But who can help you? And they have to really think about it. And you see, people need to be willing to look at and know.
I was going to
which they don't want to look at, they don't want to know.
That's the problem.
Yeah, they don't want. Most people don't want to look at it.
Right.
And so, on the one hand, they're suffering.
Of course.
And then when you provide people with an opportunity to free themselves from their suffering, they refuse. So you charge a lot of money. So, so when I did the spiritual consulting, I never charged as much as I charged the CEOs of the business. But I charged a significant amount of money, and that's one of the pains. So if they're paying more than they feel comfortable, it seems somehow it has a psychological impact. And so, of course, some people are students, they don't have any money. So, of course, I make that, depending on the person. And somebody who's a millionaire, charging the same amount of money from other people doesn't make any sense. So charge people differently. And sometimes charging works. I was criticized by people. Oh, you are teaching spirituality. Why do you charge? It is part of the. I need to make a living myself, but also it is one element of actually motivating people to do this. And,
no, otherwise, Kimura-ji, you see, the mentality is such that if they do not pay, they don't take what you're talking seriously.
Exactly.
They will not apply themselves.
Yeah. I'm glad that you say that.
To get their commitment, you have to charge.
Absolutely.
And because you touched on this point, I want to add my own experience.
Yes.
I find that if you can make one person actually dialogue with you, like how both of us are dialoguing, that is a huge achievement which will have a tremendous impact on the other person, because I find in my experience that there are very, very few people who are in a position to actually dialogue and think. They are so traumatized and they lost the thinking faculty so much. They don't have the faculty at all. They're just reacting to every life situation. And so they cannot engage in a dialogue. They cannot ask questions. They cannot go step by step. This is my difficulty. And I'm trying to always make people engage, but it is the struggle of a teacher that he does not find people who are serious enough to engage in a conversation, in a serious conversation. They're ready to accept any belief system which you may propose to them. They're ready to do any puja. They're ready to sit and chant some mantra, but they're not ready to engage in a conversation and discover anything. This is my problem.
Yes. So just a few things, so when we talk about something like a Hinduism or Buddhism, we fall into the trap of collectivism, because as you said, there's 100 different schools in Hinduism, and Buddhism was very close actually, and because Buddhism moved from one country to another, there's so many different schools, even if they have the same name, not the same. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
So we kind of want to move away from that, and that's, I think, one of the contributions that you and I can make in today's conversation. Interreligious harmony. So there is no such thing as a Buddhism in a way. There's no such thing in a collective sense. Sometimes we need to use those words to talk about it, but there is such a complexity and subtlety and
tremendous complexity. Tremendous.
Of those things that people need to know. Number one, and number two, when people want to have an interreligious harmony, oftentimes people want to the harmony being uniformity, and somehow try to find some kind of a common ground and find them together. It is possible to do that. At the same time, you see, what is necessary is an attitude, and that you and I share this. Appreciating, celebrating the difference.
You can do that only when you don't have a self. So long as you have a self, your self will anchor to the religion. So the Buddha made
in the sense of a small
nominal self. Nominal self.
Of course.
See, the Buddha made a very significant statement that once you're moved from samsara to nirvana, and you use the boat of the teaching to go from this shore to the other shore. Once you've gone to that shore, don't carry the boat on your head. Throw it away. You don't need it. This is extremely significant. But you find that you look at every religion. You can look at Hinduism, you look at Buddhism, you look at Christianity, you look at Sikhism, look at Islam. Everybody, the nominal self is anchored to a belief system. And the self has defined itself by saying that I'm a believer, I have faith. Now, I find in my experience that unless one renounces faith and begins inquiry, you cannot become free of the burden and bondage of your religion. And without you becoming free of the burden and bondage of your religion, you can never feel the heart of a person who belongs to another religion. You may be very courteous because you're very cultured, you may be refined, so you speak very polite words, but in your heart, so long as you think, I am a Christian, I am a Buddhist, I am a Hindu, you are just finished.
You understand? Yes, I do understand. And those people who gather together in parliamental world religions,
right?
And those people who come to a panel, I assume they are pretty developed people. I'm assuming, and they can start that celebration,
right?
Appreciation and celebration of differences. It can become like somehow in a simple way. People need to when you celebrate the differences. When people in the audience begin to get something there, celebration of difference means whatever it is that they are is acknowledged, appreciated, and celebrated. And there's a kind of a nothing wrong with the path they are on, and it is your path. So this kind of a teaching, you can say, or idea, I think it is very important, especially it counteracts finding a common ground, uniformity. There's a common ground, absolutely. But you see, sometimes if you have this appreciation of differences, along with the seeking of a common ground, come together, there's this appreciation itself becomes a common ground. And so that's one of the things that we can actually do. That's, in my small circle of influence. That is, I always continue to do singular cosmic destiny. Each person is singular, and the awakening is synonymous with you finding that singularity. And the path to universality, cosmic consciousness, is to really be who you are in the most defined, unique, singular way. When that happens, you have what cosmic means. So individuality, at the ultimate individuality, people find this cosmic individuality. So to me, that is, if I have to, I have maybe a few messages, but that's one of the key messages to humanity. And that's maybe a good thing.
No. That is very, very important, and that is the whole purpose of life, that you discover your uniqueness, not because the discovery of the uniqueness is a perfection of your egoism. No. In fact, the discovery of uniqueness is the decimation of your egoism.
Exactly.
It's the end of your egoism. And that is a long way. And what I'm saying is that unless you actually have a definition for yourself, for the self, which is not based on any sensory perception, but you have to be rooted within yourself without depending on upadhis and external things to define yourself, then you will be linked to the whole of humanity, because then you're not anybody. But so long as you want to be somebody, I think you are going to create a world war in a small way. And there are a lot of people like that who want to be somebody, belonging to some country, belonging to some religion, belonging to some philosophy, some ism. And so long as you want to define yourself in that very limited way, a divisiveness and a division between you and another human being cannot be erased. You have to give it up. And you have to give it up through your wisdom. It's like think of the position of the Buddha. The Buddha telling that, will he ever say that I am the Buddha? Just think of that. That is so ridiculous. And you have to be completely positionless.
Other people talk, use the words.
Right.
For example, no Zen master called their teaching Zen.
Of course.
Yeah, it was called by others.
Right. And so long as you have a position, you have a definition, there will be a sense of division. And the sense of division is so very subtle. And society will encourage you to retain that sense of division. Your religion will help you to retain that sense of division, because the religious institutions, which are monstrous creations, they have to depend on you for their own survival. Unless there are a lot of people who believe in some religion, the religious institutions cannot survive. They will just fizzle out.
Yeah, belief is belief against another belief.
Belief against another belief.
Yes.
And then belief and authority is what sustains religious institutions. And so long as you have belief and so long as you bow down to an authority, you are not going to discover anything. That's the simple truth.
You see, I use the word distinction without diremption. And diremption is separation or division. And so there's a distinction. You see, the whole creative process is making distinctions, yes? When God created the universe, you divide the earth and heaven.
Differentiation.
So there's a distinction. And each individual singularity is a distinction. And the reason why we reach the universality, cosmic consciousness from the singularity is because each singularity is distinct at the same time, a distinct hologram of the whole. It is like a... so long as we stay in the ego, that ego can never be a hologram. But when you actually distinguish, clearly realize your singularity, in that singularity, the whole universe is there. And that singularity is a distinction. It is not the division, not the separation from others, because it contains all, but in a distinct way. That's a singularity. And that is very, very important. Yes.
Right.
And so,
and for that,
in your self-knowing, initially there is a division between, or separation between the observer and observed.
Right.
And what is observed is a self, small self.
Right.
And knowing is deeper than observation. There is a, when you are observation, you begin to know in amazingly in complex, the self. There's a multi-dimensional, multifaceted, and ongoingly changing. And so on the one hand, you have an insight into, make up your personality. Actually, I call it society of personalities, because self has many different personalities depending on the situations. And then, of course, you begin to see that which you don't want to know, and so on and so forth. And you begin, and when this happens, what happens is you create this self continuum, and the larger self is actually kind of hidden from your awareness, because it is the one that is observing. But eventually what happens is this observation become wider and wider, and this continuum is become this, and it become pure consciousness without object and without subject. And that is a primordial reality.
Right.
And then self continuum is a primary reality. The more we see it become primary reality, you begin to see self in actuality. But most people live in a secondary reality, which is constructed, samsara, constructed with languages and thought. And this is created through the cultural conditioning and programming. So self is displaced into secondary reality, and we are living in a secondary reality, which is sometimes called illusion or delusion, whatever. So when you begin to do self-knowing, we begin to return to primary reality, and then secondary reality becomes part of it, and it begin to become more consistent with the primary reality. And then when it continues, eventually you will have it is no longer an experience, because it is nobody who is experiencing it, but there is a reality come into existence, which can be said to be consciousness without observer and observed, without subject and object. And then after you come out of that experience, you know what Brahman is. And then you know what Atman is. And also you begin to appreciate this, beautiful the singularity of self continuum and the multifaceted phenomenon we nominally call self.
Right.
Yes. So at this moment, secondary reality is discordant with the primary reality.
Absolutely.
And the people live in the secondary reality, not in the primary reality. So
that is the problem.
Yes. And most of the spiritual training disciplines are an attempt at bringing people back to primary reality. And oftentimes people start with the physical body, because body is in the primary reality. And so you do hatha yoga, and you really start to experience your body, and tai chi, Sufi dance, and so like a body awareness is maybe one of the easiest way, not easy, but the easiest way to begin to experience primary reality. The meditation is also designed for that purpose, yes. And I think when Krishnamurti is giving talks, he is ongoingly bringing people back to this primary reality, using secondary reality, language and thought, but ongoingly bringing people back to the primary reality. When Socrates asked those questions, or Zen masters ask these questions, they are bringing them back to the primary reality. So self-knowing, your sine qua non. It is sine qua non because it is without which it is like a kind of an essential structure of what we call primary reality.
Right. I see. Without self-knowing, we are saying two people belonging to two religions.
Exactly.
And they say, I'm a Christian by faith. And somebody says, I'm a Hindu by faith or a Muslim by faith. Now, so long as you're going to define yourself like that, how do you think your heart is really open to people of other religion? First of all, there is only one religion, and that is the religion of the Atma, or religion of the Brahman. That's only one religion.
But
and
you see, when you say that already, those people who believe think that you are teaching Hinduism.
No.
Yeah, I understand. So those
Father in heaven. Father in heaven.
This, yes?
Yeah, Father in heaven.
That is a difficulty.
Nirvana, use whatever word you
Nirvana,
want.
whatever we call it, yes.
But only one truth. And then the labels have become the things which give life to the nominal self. The labels are the thing which give life. And you think you're that label. And then you're saying that we should not fight with each other. Now, ideals have never worked throughout human history. You say that we are all brothers. You create an ideal. It has never worked. Now, you sign peace treaties. You say that we should have peace. And we will make a legislation in Parliament. And we will make a reservation for the native people of Canada, native people of America. But in your heart, the evil is not gone. There is divisiveness in the heart. And without self-knowing, I don't see how the evil can go. Because you are yourself. The evil is not outside. You are yourself the evil. The evil is in the self, in the divisive self. And you've got to know that that self thrives on the division. Thrives on that wrong belief that it is different from others. Because it uses the body to define itself. And so the whole structure must be demolished through self-knowing. And which is a long process of discovery, which must be not only encouraged by one or two masters in some secluded ashrams, but society must be encouraging of that discovery. If society wants to change and become saner, otherwise society will only be based on belief, and belief means conflict, because your belief is different from my belief, and you think your belief is right, I think my belief is right. And we are never going to agree with each other. And two secondary selves will never agree with each other. They may pretend to agree, but they can't.
You know, when people ask, what comes after enlightenment? And I say, wonderment.
Right.
Actually,
right.
I say, quest is eternal, answers are temporary.
See,
in a way, the insight and realization you're talking about is a gate through which humans become, for the first time, able to ask real questions.
Right.
So it goes beyond, having knowledge, obviously, and but you need to have certain amount of knowledge to be able to ask questions. But it is more like you become a question mark. And so every question you ask has an assumption upon which you are, basing your question. So when those assumptions are broken, what happens is you become the question mark. So you become a quest, and it's become wonderment. It's, in a way, you become like a baby again. You become so completely curious, and that is a pristine state of being. That is available for people, and then there will be no division whatsoever, and because you know absolutely nothing in one sense, so you become very curious what other people are thinking and what believing. So it become more like a mutual quest. And so self-knowing can be framed in that context as well. So
it is a journey which individuals are taking. I say that only three categories of people get onto that journey. One is people who are by destiny seekers, like yourself and myself. Then people on whom huge missiles of misfortunes land in life, so that the material life is taken away from your hands. Then you have nowhere else to go, but you have to begin something completely new. Or you have to become 65 years old or 60 years old, and you've seen the illusion of this material life sufficiently so that you're not anymore enamored of it. You're not in a mood to run behind it as you were running for 40 years. Now, these are the three gates through which one can come to this self-knowing. And I don't see ordinary successful people coming to self-knowing, people who are pleasure seekers, people who are, for whom life is still going very well. The thunderbolt has not hit them. I don't see them coming. And you need to have huge misfortune, or you must be a seeker. And by divine architecture, you must be a seeker, whereby you will actually throw away your material life and you will go after this quest. That's what a seeker does.
I have a question for you. Do people become seeker, or do they were born?
No, they are born in a state of unknowingness. Then there is the garden of pleasure, which gives an invitation to the senses. Please come, I'll make you happy. And then, so you fall for that invitation. You go into the garden of pleasure. And then the unfortunate thing in the garden of pleasure is that the garden of pleasure is also a concomitant garden of pain. So sooner or later, there's going to be a huge tsunami of pain. And then you will know that the pleasure was only a very deceitful promise. It's really not true.
But my question is, are there seekers who are not the other two categories? So somebody who had a real big, dark night of the soul with some experiences, or there are people who are in 60s, 70s, and they begin to see something. They begin to seek something. They are also spiritual seekers. But I'm asking, are there people who haven't had any big, breakdown or old enough to see the life, but somehow are seekers? And if there are people like that, what distinguishes them from others?
That's by divine architecture. You see, by divine architecture, 1.4 billion people or 6 billion people on planet Earth, 6.5 billion people on planet Earth, everybody is unique. And everybody has got a divine architecture. And that is the most interesting thing, that we are not carbon copies of each other. We are unique. And peace lies in the discovery that you are unique and that you do not need to follow anybody, not even the Buddha. You don't need to follow anybody. And you are so perfect and complete in yourself. And you've got to make that discovery and come into the fullness. And now there are some seekers. By divine architecture, they are seekers.
What is unique about that architecture?
There is an astrological pattern to that thing, because the planets of seeking are Rahu, Mars, and 3rd house and 11th house. These are the cosmic life energies. Now, they are cosmic life energies. That is, they are not you. They are above you and beyond you. But they are operational in the theater of your body and in the theater of the consciousness. And they drive the destiny of this individual entity called a human being, who is actually a divine manifestation. Now, this pattern will not be there for others. Now, they have the curiosity and they are driven to seek. Now, initially, They may be seeking worldly pleasures. What are they seeking? They are seeking fulfillment, peace, and happiness is what they are seeking. Now they think that they will get it in the garden of pleasure. That's the initial seeking. Now, once they are driven out of that garden of pleasure, because they found out that that's an illusion, that there is a whole lot of pain which is hidden, then their seeking will shift and they will start seeking in a different direction. And then the seeking will become furious.
But there are people who just stay in the garden of pleasure, as you call,
Right.
entire life, and some people who move out of it. Now, so astrological sign will show you the people who have the probability of becoming a seeker, as opposed to people who are unlikely to become a seeker.
Of course.
Interesting.
Of course, and also there are periods in life. You see, somebody may be very spiritual from his 20th year to his 36th year. Now, after the 36th year, he may become more materialistic. And somebody may become more materialistic after 65. And he might have been a spiritual seeker in his younger years. So it depends on how the movement of time happens for that particular individual.
From your astrological perspective, what does it mean that somebody is a spiritual seeker?
What it means is that person throws away his material life in quest of the truth or in quest of the divine. He throws it away because he has got a calling. He has a very, very strong calling. He's tempted. He's tempted by the truth. He's tempted by this hidden mystery in life as much as another man is tempted by sex or another man is tempted by wealth. It's the same thing, except that the temptation is of a particular kind.
Based on the Western astrology, I have no earth sign.
You have?
I have no earth sign, only water, fire, and air.
Okay.
So, what does it mean?
That means that water means deep feelings, and fire means enlightenment. People who have got a lot of cosmic life energies in fire signs, they have a very good potential for enlightenment.
And what about air?
Air means they are always spinning a lot of new ideas, thinkers, like Mahatma Gandhi. Air
and
signs.
What about the earth?
The earth are very practical people like gardeners, like doctors, like project directors. They deal with the physical dimension of life.
Okay.
Not that the physical dimension of life cannot be spiritual. No, that is not right.
Okay. So
but they deal with the practical manifestation.
Those four elements are not the sign for the spiritual seekers. Not necessarily.
Which four signs?
Yeah, four elements. Earth, air, fire, water. So they don't not necessarily indicate that somebody being a spiritual seeker.
Every sign can indicate.
Okay.
Every sign can
indicate.
Again,
I want to know, so what does it mean? What constitutes a spiritual seeker from your perspective?
Right.
Otherwise.
Right. A spiritual seeker, as I said, the third house is the house of seeking. So astrologers call it house of profound interest and profound curiosity. Now, if the Lord of the third house, which has that energy of going after something, you're going after something, exactly like a lusty man goes after sex, or a very ambitious man for wealth goes after money, it's the same thing. It's profound interest and profound curiosity. Now, if it goes into the ninth house, that Lord goes into the ninth house, then that individual will have profound interest and profound curiosity in the realm of religion. But if it goes into the 10th house, then he'll have profound interest and profound curiosity in his professional work. Now, if it goes into the 8th house or the 12th house, then he'll have profound interest in mysticism and occultism.
Interesting.
In the unmanifest. So it depends on the mood of the divine at when you came into manifestation. Everything depends on the mood of the divine at the time and place of birth. Now that is like a seed. Now in that seed is the complete blueprint and the unfolding of everybody's destiny. That seed, whether that seed will give rise to a mango tree or whether it will give rise to a coconut tree. A coconut seed cannot give rise to a mango tree. A mango seed cannot give rise to a coconut tree. So one has to study that seed. And astrologers are all the time studying these seeds.
Yeah. Do you read the chart of your student?
I read charts all the time, Kimuraji.
There's an empirical evidence that this is correct.
Right, of course.
Interesting.
I actually use Jyotish for self-knowing. What I say is that most of us know ourselves only imperfectly, maybe 50%, 60%, 70%, because especially we want to keep the shadow self somewhere hidden in the dungeon. We don't want to look at the shadow self, the darker self. And real spiritual growth is the integration of the divine and the demonic. The two have to be integrated so that they are not in conflict with each other. And if any spiritual seeker is not able to integrate the divine and the demonic, then he cannot come to peace within himself. That's a crucial part of, as Carl Jung said, Carl Jung put it very beautifully. He said, you do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So it's a very, very important. And Krishnamurti's great work, which I don't think people are realizing, is actually intended for people who do not know how to deal with darkness. That's where Krishnamurti steps in like an emperor. It's a very, very powerful medicine.
When you are in his presence, you are given the opportunity to see it with him. So his dialogue is designed for people to actually see their own shadows. Very beautifully said. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, there are 3 volumes called Commentaries on Living.
Yes.
3 volumes where the rich and the poor, the intelligent and the foolish, the honest and the dishonest, the virtuous and the vicious, all of them, they come to talk to him about their personal problems. Krishnamurti has talked to hundreds and thousands of people all over the world.
Yes.
And they're asking him, how will you help us to solve this problem? And Krishnamurti is found commenting on them. And that's an amazing treasure chest, Commentaries on Living.
I have read The Awakening of Intelligence,
Right.
Ending of Time,
right.
First and Last Freedom.
That is a seminal work, First and Last Freedom.
Yeah, those are. I have seen the Commentary on Living. Maybe I should read it.
Yeah, one should have plenty of time. And this is for life, actually, Commentaries on Living. And but David Bohm, it's The Ending of Time and The Awakening of Intelligence. And those are important works. But the seminal work is Freedom First and Last, with Aldous Huxley writing the foreword.
Yes.
That's a seminal work.
Yeah, that's true.
And Krishnamurti in his public talks never speaks anything which is in the First and Last Freedom. Because the First and Last Freedom is the depth and profundity of Krishnamurti's work. And that never is visible in the public talks.
So, if I may ask you a question. So what is your intention in actually holding this panel discussion at Parliament of World Religion?
Okay, thank you for asking this question.
What do you want to accomplish?
Right. There are, okay. So Kimuraji, let us think of a social pyramid with the apex at the top and then the base of the pyramid at the bottom. And the whole pyramid is filled with human beings. Now, right at the apex of the pyramid, you have the creative minority, whom I prefer to define like this. The creative minority are in touch with the inner self. They have come home to themselves and they lead lives of integrity. They are not in the nominal self. They are original, they are authentic, they are true to themselves. They are non-conformists. They are not trying to fit into a social pattern. So they become actually like water taps through whom intelligence is flowing out. Now, when rot sets in human society, even the creative minority become corrupt. So the whole of society becomes corrupt, and the creative minority become corrupt. And how does it manifest? It manifests in their suffering a reverse shift. That is, they move from the atmic ground of innocence and intelligence to the secondary self, which is wallowing in pleasure and pain and in crookedness. They suffer, they lose that connection. They lose that connection in times of disintegration, in times of trouble, and then they become bad people. And therefore, the British historian has a special name for them. He says the creative minority become dominant minority because they no more have integrity, they no more have charisma. So the rank and file of the people will not listen to them. And because nobody listens to them any longer, they will use manipulation and force. And so they become ugly. You can see it happening all through history. You can see that there are great tyrants of history. And it's basically the creative minority at the top who give direction to the whole of society. And you will find that when a society, for example, you look at Krishnamurti and the Buddha, you see that they have given an auspicious direction to the whole of human society. Now, in times of trouble, they are not sources of inspiration. So there will be dissent and rebellion. Now, because the Master Krishnamurti has come and gone, now there are a large number of people at the grassroots level at the base of the pyramid who have drunk from the fountain of self-knowing, which has been opened up by Krishnamurti, and they belong to different religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, then Judaism, then Sikhism, and so on. But these people may not be true Christians, true Buddhists, and true Hindus, or true Jews, because they got the light of salvation from outside their religion, because their religion did not give it to them, so probably Krishnamurti gave it to them. So they do not know enough about their religion. Right? So there are a handful of people. Now through them, this current of self-knowing will move from the base and it will move to the top, but it will take a very long time. Now, if you look at human history, you will see that throughout human history, good and bad people have influenced the whole of human society. More often, it's the bad people who have influenced. And the good people, their influence is only moving through society very slowly. Because they are not power hungry, they're not interested in power, and they're not sitting in seats of powerful governmental positions, so they're not able to influence. But there are still, even when the creative minority have become dominant and they're turned rotten, a few handful of people will be very intelligent. And if you manage to catch their attention and you create in them an intellectual conviction, then it is possible that this whole new nascent culture of self-knowing, it can be set going right from the apex of the pyramid, and it can come cascading down. Like so many government policies, like so many government new things are set going from the apex to the bottom. There is a promotion in the social sphere, promotion in the religious sphere, promotion in the political sphere. But for that, you've got to look to very honest and upright men, very authentic people who are interested in the truth, who are really interested in uplifting the people, not in influencing the people and they benefiting, not that category. And another thing, because Krishnamurti stood on the ground of solitude and aloneness, which is completely outside every religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, all the world religions. Krishnamurti did not belong to any nation. Krishnamurti did not belong to any religion. And the religions are have turned stagnant and sterile. They don't have elan vital. They don't have life. Because they're maintaining status quo. That's what they're doing. And they're doing this by speaking hundreds of lies. They are in darkness, and they don't even want to admit that they are in darkness and that they want the light. Because they're all in positions of power, to say that they are in darkness is like the Pope declaring, or like one of the Shankaracharyas declaring that they are in darkness. Now the self won't allow them to do this, because the self is operational through them. Now, just think of a better world where the religions humble themselves, become vulnerable, and permit an infusion of this meta-religious culture of self-knowing to percolate into the religions. That is, you and I, we go and sit in a church, let us say in Tampa, Florida, both of us are sitting, and the church father, he is speaking to us, and he is speaking about the importance of self-knowing. Now we are going to take it very seriously, right? We go to a Hindu guru's ashram and he starts speaking about self-knowing. He is not copying Krishnamurti and stealing from Krishnamurti, no, but he is telling us what is the significance of the self-knowing. And then we'll take him a lot more seriously because he's in a position of power, right?
So what I can see is that, just in this pyramid, so there is a movement, vertical movement,
right,
and also horizontal movement,
right,
like vortexes,
right, vortices,
right. So there is a communication from the
right,
awakened ones,
right,
and then communication from those people who are seeking, going this way,
right.
And at the same time they will be speaking with their colleagues,
right.
They belong to different regions. So there's this movement and this
helical movement.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very good. I like that. Yes.
Helical from the top. It's a top to down helix and a bottom to top helix.
Yes.
And
also horizontal helix.
Right. Definitely horizontal. Yeah.
When you see all those movements together,
right.
It is the whole thing becomes extremely dynamic.
Exactly.
And the pyramid itself maybe evolve itself.
Of course. Of course. Yes. And a lot of people may be sticking to mainstream religion because nobody has shown a very clear alternative other than belief and faith. Now, Buddhism is the only religion in the whole world. Buddhism and Hindu Jnana Yoga and Advaita Vedanta are the only two religions which are based on inquiry, which is a movement away from the milestone of faith. It's a movement away. Now, all religions ask all the followers to camp at the milestone of faith where they capture them and make them slaves. You agree with that?
Yes, I agree. Gurujev uses the three layers. Esoteric circle,
right?
Mesoteric circle, and exoteric circle. So if we combine his model and yours, is an esoteric circle, mesoteric circle, and the exoteric circle.
Right.
So there is a conversation now. Esoteric circle used to stay only within the esoteric circle, and a few people just went there. Now you want to have this.
Right.
And you are placing the self-knowing as at the core of esoteric teaching paradigm, which can be understood at each level.
At each level, that's the point.
Self-knowing at the esoteric circle has a different significant dimensions, and much richer significance and greater dimensions than the one that in the exoteric circle. But there is it's called symmetry transformation. So there's a fundamental symmetry that exists in esoteric circle. It's transformed into mesoteric circle, and there's a approximate symmetry transformation, and then it is again transformed into this exoteric circle, and so it is a beautiful model. If we can kind of one of your computer person to come up with the graphics, which is not the static, but more like a movement,
Right, movement,
and
exactly.
three
Movement.
circles, and having this,
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
can visualize what you want to accomplish. Yeah.
When Lakshmi Kumar made the proposal to me that the Parliament of the World's Religions is happening, would you be interested in speaking? Now, I preferred not to speak alone, but I prefer to dialogue with a group of people, because you can reveal the whole depth and beauty of a theme only when many people question you and it is looked at from different angles, and rather than one man speaking monotonically about the whole theme. The thing will come out better. So I chose a panel discussion. And then I did not know the answer, how to take self-knowing to the collective level of society. But I just accepted. And then I stayed with the thing that I do not know. Then it revealed itself. The whole thing revealed itself. Because I don't know how to do it. But I accepted. And then I found that Krishnamurti in one of his books has actually said that the whole of that society cannot be transformed. Only individuals can be transformed. So I gave a model of the Buckminster Fullerene molecule. I think you may have seen it.
Yes.
And the relationship between two human beings is the key thing. And there we must have purity and integrity. And without that, society cannot change. So it's hard work. So as I said at the end of my introduction, we will not live to see this work. It may take 20 generations. Or Krishnamurti said while talking to the American president that it may take 200 years. And he said the fruition may happen in America or India. Because it's very open, it's extremely open. And India because it's obsessed with religion and the spiritual thinking.
Yeah. You know, there's a term interdisciplinary,
right,
multidisciplinary,
right,
and your term is interreligious. So it is a form of interdisciplinary. The interdisciplinary means, you know, the particular paradigm that is used in one discipline, you translate into the other discipline and use the paradigm to see what you can do. For example, quantum medicine. You know, there's quantum physics. They use quantum physics into medicine and become quantum medicine. In the same way, so self-knowing is a kind of paradigm, a model. And let's see if Christian, somebody with a Christian background, let's see how this self-knowing model can be actually, you know, enhance, you know, their spiritual growth. Buddhist and Hinduism are easier, and Islam, and so on and so forth. And so it is an interdisciplinary model, and it's very interesting. Yes.
Right. Actually, I was thinking, Kimuraji, I was thinking that think of a lotus or any flower which has got many petals.
Yes.
7, 8, or 10 petals, like a mandala, and every petal is a religion. And the religions are full of wisdom, except that the wisdom is not fully blossoming in a large number of individuals. It may be ripe and fragrant in a handful of individuals in every religion, but those individuals are living very peaceful, silent lives, so you do not even know that they actually exist, and the entire religion has come alive in those individuals. Now, Krishnamurti is at the calyx of this flower. He's right at the center of that flower, away from all the petals. A very unique master, never belonged to any religion, and no disciples, no followers, and no propaganda, only speaking the truth, and then disappeared from planet Earth. And now, what I have done in my life is to make Krishnamurti's work intelligible to Hindus. Because Hindus are not concerned with self-knowing, they know nothing about it, but they're obsessed with self-realization. That is their madness. They're obsessed with it. And so I built a bridge from Krishnamurti to self-realization, which I called Amanaska Yoga. And I want Christian seekers and Buddhist seekers and Judaic seekers to make Krishnamurti's work intelligible in the metaphors and mythic images and sutras of their religion, Now, if you don't make it intelligible in the language and sutras of particular religions, then there will be no infusion of Krishnamurti into those religions.
Correct.
And therefore it will fail. And I fear that Krishnamurti will be kicked out of India in the same way in which Buddhism has been driven out of India. Because Krishnamurti, like the Buddha, is a heterodox teacher.
Correct. Yes.
And that is why it's important to present Krishnamurti so that Hindus will understand it. Hindus will go into Brahmavada, that is dialogue on Atman and Brahman. They're crazy about that. Sorry to put it that way, but that is the thing they're obsessed with. They love it, and you've got to bring it to their doorstep, and fire their imagination, and then they will take it. And that is the thing I'm doing.
For example, in any religion, you can actually find the seed of self-knowing.
Absolutely, right.
And
right.
So when you are speaking to Hindu who are obsessed with self-realization, within that teaching, you see the seed of self-knowing, and then people become more open for this.
Right.
Same is, I think Buddhism is quite easy.
Buddhism is easier. Buddhism is easier.
Yeah,
right.
The Christians, and the Christian teaching. How does the self-knowing actually? Where is the seed of self-knowing in Christianity, for example? I'm asking.
Right. You see, Kimura-ji, in the case of Christianity, you have a kind of different kind of pattern is an operation. Now, Christianity is a very, very great religion, and there is tremendous common ground between Christianity and Buddhism, which has recently been brought to the notice of the world of seekers by the American extraordinary Catholic sage Bernadette Roberts. She lived in Los Angeles and passed away in August 2017. And I want to recommend her work, which you will love. It's called The Real Christ. And she strikes extraordinary parallel between the Buddha and the Christ. And it is too great, it is such a great insight that no Buddhist knows about it, no Christian knows about it. And according to her, Christianity is a completely misunderstood religion because the word Christ does not apply to Jesus. It is basically Atma. It is the ground of oneness where the divine and the human intersect and meet. It is common ground. It's like a corridor between the completely indescribable world of the divine, which is beyond even the self into which the Buddha exploded. Beyond the Atma it is, beyond the Atma. But the Atma or the Christ is the common ground between God and being human. Now, Bernadette Roberts makes an extraordinary revelation. She's saying that calling the Messiah, Jesus Christ, is completely wrong, because Christ is the name for this common ground between the divine and being the secondary self. So the peculiar thing about the Messiah Jesus is he was born in the Christ consciousness and he died in the Christ consciousness. That is the peculiar thing about that Messiah. That's why he's a world teacher and full of compassion, and he's so different from others. And
the interesting thing is that's how I always understood Christianity to be, Christ to be. And many Buddhists will just, completely agree, because that's how we actually understand. Many Buddhists understand Christ in the same way that this woman is talking about. There are many actually anecdotes. One famous Buddhist master in the Meiji period is 150, well over 100 years ago, when the Bible was translated into Japanese. Somebody read the Bible to him, and he said, "Oh, this man Christ is a Zen master." And and then there's a long tradition of Christian tradition, in a sense, called New Thought movement, which started with, well, depending on a person, but definitely there was somebody like Thomas Troward from England, who was actually a judge in India, Punjab. He was a British judge who served as a judge in Punjab, Thomas Troward, and he reinterpreted Christianity entirely new way. And again, he talks Christ in the same way that this woman is talking about. So maybe it is new in one sense, but it is really not new for those of us who have a Buddhist background. And Christ consciousness, people say Christ is a state of consciousness, Christ consciousness.
Right.
And Buddha achieved the Christ consciousness, and it is available to everybody. And what is Christ consciousness? It is in the way you describe it. So if you use the Hindu language, that is exactly what it is.
But Kimura-ji, there is something very extraordinary about the Buddha, which I recently discovered. I did not know it before. See, we have got to take the Buddha very, very seriously when he denies the empirical and worldly self as an illusion, and he also dismisses the metaphysical self, the Atma, as an illusion. Now, basically, the journey is like this. From the empirical self, which is wallowing in pleasure and then suffering with pain, one has to move to the Atmic ground. So you come to the Atmic ground, which is Christ consciousness. Now, the significant thing is the Buddha and a certain number of very great masters in India, like Shankara, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and Maharshi Patanjali, and all of them, for them, the Atma, which is a corridor between the divine and the human life, that exploded. Now, when that explodes, now God also explodes. There is no God after that. It's a completely thing. Now this happens in Hinduism in the highest apex of Jnana Yoga, in Advaita Vedanta. It has happened to some masters. A recent time, the master to whom it happened is Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he clearly describes it. Very, very clearly describes it. The other person who very clearly describes it is Bernadette Roberts. Now, Bernadette Roberts is saying something very, very significant. What she's saying is that when this Atma, which is the pure self, when that is going to evaporate and completely vanish and disappear, we do not know. But it definitely happened for the Buddha. And that is why the Buddha is vehemently denying the metaphysical self, the Atman of the Upanishads, and is also denying the empirical self, which anyway we know is an illusion. Is denying both the things. And for the Messiah Jesus, Bernadette Roberts is saying that when he is on the cross, the explosion of the Atma took place for him. Not until then. On the cross, it happened. And there is evidence for that. Now, this is a mystery. And I don't think Christians actually know this mystery. And so Bernadette Roberts is revealing it. And she's a very, very extraordinarily honest and authentic Roman Catholic sage for whom the Atma exploded. She's another one of those sages for whom it completely exploded. So she understands what the Buddha was talking about throughout his life. And therefore, even the Prajna Paramita Sutra and the Madhyamika Mahaparinirvana Sutra, which even Nagarjuna might have created in the 1st century of the Christian era or 3rd century of the Christian era, they may be apologies which Buddhist theoreticians and Buddhist scholars may have created in order to accommodate Buddhism back into India and to make Buddhism not so antagonistic to Hinduism. It might have been the handiwork of people like Nagarjuna and others who have softened the blow that the Buddha gave the Brahminical tradition. The blow is of immense proportions because the Atma exploded for him. Now, this also happened to Nisargadatta Maharaj. And when I find time and I come back to Chennai after November 15th, I can actually give you the exact sentences where Maharaj describes this. And you will be very interested in this. And therefore, there's a deepening mystery in this. There's a deepening mystery, and there's the mystery is endless. We cannot solve it at any point in time and say that now I got the full puzzle, I got it. We can't say that. It's an endless deepening mystery.
There was a American sage, Franklin Merrill Wolf, who was a philosopher, mathematician, turned into mystic.
Okay.
And he talks about that explosion of Atma experience in his own way. And so, yes, I understand what you're talking about. Yes. The cross is a very symbolic experience for humanity.
Dying,
yeah, it is possible that, and the teaching of resurrection is also very interesting, because from Buddhist perspective, Mahaparinirvana is only possible after you leave the body.
Right.
Now, Christian teaching, you resurrect, which means actually Christ actually was able to actually contain Mahaparinirvana in the body, and resurrection actually symbolizes that experience. And so again, this is a Buddhist perspective. Maybe very similar. Mahaparinirvana is that explosion of the Atman. And normal teaching of Buddhism is that you cannot have it while you are incarnate in the body. And resurrection is this proof of it, that actually Buddha, the Christ was able to actually be in the state of Mahaparinirvana while having the body. And so there are many words to describe what you're talking about, and people have that experience, and and then what? So I think we are very much in alignment and agreement, and we can explore, how to communicate this in 21st century humanity. And I found that it is not easy to communicate this to millennials. My program, the youngest person ever took was like 23 years old, but usually cut-off age was 28. So usually the people who took my class was baby boomers, Generation X, and very few Generation Ys. And I realized that, I need to change the way to approach younger people, who grew up with, Facebook and the Google, and their attention span is very short. And you can't ask them to meditate for 60 minutes. And so again, what you are trying to do and what I'm trying to do, depending on the audience, there's a lot of challenges.
Of course.
Yes, and we want to use the language and the expression and practices that are actually accommodating of the new kind of consciousness that is emerging today. And one of the things that my friends and I are doing is called e-consciousness. And
what
it
is
that? Use of technological devices for their meditative practice, and probably this self-knowing thing can be applied. So we shall see. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities and lots of possibilities.
Definitely.
So I'm
Definitely.
very...
I am very happy to talk to you, Kimura-ji, and appreciate your absolute openness and the great depth to which you've gone into this universe of liberation and nirvana. And it is a blessing that I've had today that I could talk to you. And let us hope to continue these dialogues later. Huh?
Yes, and I'm very honored that you invited me, and let us continue.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely, and please send me your birth details.
Okay.
I will look into your chart.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Very happy to do that. Yeah.
So you know everything about me more than I do.
No. What I tell people is nobody can know you better than you yourself. Even God doesn't know you as well as you know yourself.
Yeah, I am joking, but it's very interesting. Absolutely. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you very
namaste.
much.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Kimura.